Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Senator Scott Martin. I represent Southern Lancaster County, the 13th Senatorial District. And today we're here to talk about Senate Resolution number 174, condemning the practice of selective abortions of children with Down syndrome. First, in getting started, I'd like to thank my colleagues, including Senator Scarnati, who's here, who you're going to hear from in a little bit, who all have a passion for this issue. I want to thank Kurt and Chloe Condrich and Mother Margie. I know Margie's out there. You may remember Chloe from Chloe's Law, which was passed in 2014, which she did a wonderful job advocating for. Truly made a difference. But also want to, and they represent the Human Coalition. I'd like to thank the PA Catholic Conference, the PA Pro-Life Federation, the Pennsylvania Family Institute, and folks from the ARC of Pennsylvania are here today. The reason why this resolution is being put in place, I think everyone in this room probably either saw on television or read on websites a report by CBS News not too long ago that actually was celebrating the job that Iceland has done in celebrating their nearly 100% eradication of Down syndrome in their country. When I read the article originally, I had many different thoughts that came to mind. First and foremost was the fact that eliminating people is not curing any type of genetic condition, which is the practice that is going on there. In addition to that, what I found equally as stunning in what was being celebrated was talking about how children or adults with Down syndrome were being spared from the burden and pain of life. And it's the kind of article that you read that brings tears to your eyes. And I think there's probably every single person standing here that knows of a family or an individual that may have Down syndrome. I thought immediately of my friend Kyle. Kyle's 33 years old. Kyle was working two jobs, one at Texas Roadhouse, but really he was working at Home Depot, and he recently got full-time a couple years ago. And I thought about how great a job Kyle does. He lives independently. He knows much more about home improvement than I will ever know, and brings a smile and a joy to so many people's lives. I read stories of folks with Down syndrome who scale mountains, things that we probably wish we could all do at some point. And then you hear stories like of Chloe and the joy she has brought to her family's life. The bottom line is that there is a scary thing happening not only around the world, but here in this country. With the advancement of genetic testing, combined with the brutality of abortion, 90%, think about that, 90% of those children who are discovered to have Down syndrome in the womb are selectively targeted and terminated. Think about, where does this actually end? Yesterday, I had the heartbreaking experience of standing in the Capitol Media Center talking about childhood cancer. Some heartbreaking stories of kids currently going through it, yet going through others that have survived, that have overcome. What happens when we all of a sudden are able to now decide that we can find that there's children in the womb who have a genetic disposition to cancer? How about baldness? How about being too short? You name the condition. We should not be in the business of selectively choosing which life should begin or end. I stand here with my colleagues today, most of whom are all on the resolution supporting this. But we want to raise awareness of this because folks every day live independent lives that bring joy to so many. They should not be targeted. We are a better society than that. So with that, I'd like to introduce our Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Joe Scarnati.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Martin, and I appreciate not only you introducing the resolution, but having the courage to speak out about something that too often around this building folks seem to like to put under a rug. And I just thank all my colleagues and all the stakeholders here that have joined us today to bring out and talk about Senate Resolution 174. I used to watch CBS News. You've given me a new reason not to. But what I can say is, if you talk to any of the parents, families, friends of those that have children with Down syndrome or any disability, what you'll find when you talk to those parents is that these children bring more love, compassion, and life experiences that nobody else will ever experience. Now, these kids are certainly a unique part of our families, and I know. I had a daughter with severe disabilities, and I don't think I would have changed one day of our experience with her for those 25 years because of what she taught us. And I remember talking with a doctor at one point that, as many parents do in the beginning, you ask why. Why did this happen? How did this happen? And I remember the doctor saying something very unmedical-like. And what the doctor said to me was, your daughter, Joe, and all these other children are using 100% of what God gave them. If only we could get every young person to use 100% of the talents that God gave them. What a different world it would be. And we do need to speak up. We need to bring to light the atrocities that do happen in front of our own eyes on the national and international media. Too often we celebrate the lives of those that pass. In this case, we need to celebrate the lives of those who are just born. And those with Down syndrome, those lives need to be celebrated. They're very special people. So thank you for this, and we need to work to make sure we get this resolution passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. In doing this resolution, I wasn't here in 2014 when Chloe did a lot of her work, but since we were working on this, I've had the real pleasure of meeting Kurt and Chloe. Chloe has not only made a difference here in advocating for Chloe's Law, but I'm sure you hear she also had the opportunity to also share her thoughts with Vice President Mike Pence. And Kurt and Chloe actually spoke at the United Nations as well, and they're here to share their story too. So, Kurt, Chloe.
Okay, thank you, Senator Martin. I want to thank all the members of the Senate, the members of the community, the pro-life community for coming out today on what I consider not to just be, this is not an issue facing our culture. I will say this is the issue facing our culture. There's no other issue. We're living in a moment of history where our actions, what we do or what we fail to do, will determine who we are as people, who we are as a civilization. I'll make this very clear. This is not a partisan issue. This is not a Republican, a Democrat issue, an independent issue. This is a human life issue. This is why we were placed on this earth. I'll share with you when my beautiful wife was pregnant with Chloe. We were 40 years old at the time, and during the pregnancy, they kept pressuring us to have prenatal tests. At the time, I was a city policeman. I did tell Senator Martin I did like coffee and donuts. He did ask me that question, but so during that pregnancy, we were pressured to have prenatal tests. And I finally asked the doctor one time, or the medical person, I said, why are you pressuring us to have these tests? And they said, well, you're high risk to have a child with Down syndrome. Now, the word risk is not a kind word. It means, danger, look out, something bad's coming down. And I said, okay, well, let's say the test comes back and we have a child with Down syndrome. I said, what do we do? And I remember this, I was in a city hospital, I think I was in a uniform at the time, and the medical professor, well, you can make a decision. Now, if somebody walked in that hospital with a gun or a knife and tried to hurt somebody, I obviously was going to jump in front of them as a policeman. But I have medical people telling me that if you don't like the way your daughter's made up, and we knew we were having a daughter, you can kill her right here in this hospital and move on. So that just really deeply disturbed me. Our little Chloe was born. We did not have the prenatal tests, and you know, my wife and I, we just embraced her. My 4-year-old son Nolan brought her home and just realized what a beautiful gift she was. We put her in early intervention services. She started doing excellent. By age 3, I'll share with you, Chloe was reading. I jabbed my colleagues I used to work with. She reads better than most of the cops I used to work with on the street. You know, she has better attention span too. She was reading. She was going to school. She was, you know, we weren't looking at her disability anymore. We're looking at this child has many abilities. She was bringing unconditional light and joy into this world. And as she's grown up, we've seen it. You know, the cool thing for me is Chloe doesn't have malice in her. She'll never hurt you. She'll never bully you. She'll never start a rumor about you. She'll never go on a shooting spree. When's the last time you looked in a newspaper and a child with Down syndrome was swept up in a heroin bust? You know, when my daughter watches the evening news, I'm sure she's very disturbed at how disabled we are as a culture. And that is why we as a culture have chosen this path to eliminate a group of individuals that I would argue this world desperately needs during this time. We need human beings like Chloe, like all these individuals with Down syndrome, that just bring love, unconditional love, purity, joy, light into a culture, like I said, that desperately needs that. So as Chloe got older, I found out that a lot of the majority of these women were told to abort these kids. So, you know, being a policeman, being sworn to defend and protect, I decided to change my career, went back to school, got involved in the disability field, and since then, you know, just become basically a 24/7 advocate for these children. You know, we come up here. Chloe was instrumental in getting the Down Syndrome Prenatal Education Act passed, which was named Chloe's Law. She's met probably most of the members of the legislature up here, both parties, just to show them what her abilities are. She's, has a book with her picture on it, and she has a chapter about her. Recently, at a private meeting with Vice President Pence, her and I, and my wife, we spoke at the United Nations in New York City back in the spring, just about this issue. And back in the spring when I spoke about what was going on in Iceland, because I knew back then what was happening. And I actually invited the ambassador to Iceland to come to the talk. He didn't show up, but that was his loss. So I'm here today as a father. I work for Human Coalition, but I'm really here as a dad today to ask you all to support these children, to ask you to support this resolution. I thank Senator Martin for taking the time to do this, because you know there's so many things going on in this state right now. There's so many issues in this and that, but I don't know of a greater issue than this. You know, and as Senator Martin said, what if we get an autism gene next week? How about if we get one for depression? How about ADHD? Let's just start getting rid of everybody that we as a culture say should not be here. I think that happened once in human history, and it led to the greatest slaughter of the Holocaust. You know, when we talk about inclusion and including kids, you know, this prenatal genocide, and that's what it is a genocide, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, is the ultimate form of prejudice, of bigotry, of hate, of discrimination, of all those words that we hear all the time on the news. Well, that's the ultimate form. You know, in Pennsylvania, we have a moratorium right now on the death penalty, but we still have a group of kids in Pennsylvania who are being tested, identified, and being given a death sentence who've never committed a crime, who've never hurt anybody, who've never done a thing in the world, and they're beginning, think about this, they're beginning a prenatal death sentence. So today, please join these fine legislators, these people here today to rally, to have this resolution passed that will, you know, be a first step in hopefully ending this prenatal eugenic movement against these beautiful kids. And you know, Chloe's message is really, her and I, we go around, we tell people to embrace and not erase children with Down syndrome. So Chloe, would you like to say a couple words, honey? Huh? You want to say a couple words to the people? Tell them what Jesus made you.
What?
Go ahead. Tell people what Jesus made you.
What?
And tell them what Jesus made you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Tell them. What did he make you?
What do you want me to say?
I want you to say right here. You want to read this?
Right here?
Yep. Go ahead.
Make me perfect.
Okay. Jesus made me perfect. Thank you again, and we'll be around after the press conference here if you would like to meet Chloe, and I hope you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kurt, and thank you, Chloe. Up next, I'd like to ask Senator John Eichelberger, who's chair of the Pro-Life Caucus, to please come up and say a few words.
Well, I tell you, Kurt said, laid out a very good case for where we are today in Pennsylvania. I just like to embrace that theme and offer that we have the support of many good people in the legislature today that recognize that we shouldn't be systematically exterminating people because of a condition they have in the womb. You don't get people as sweet as Chloe every day in this building, and we're thrilled to have her when she's down here. And we have folks that come in with all sorts of problems and all sorts of demands on us, and we try to greet each one with respect and consideration and do what we can to help people. That's part of what we do as legislators in this building. People with Down syndrome should be given the same amount of respect. We shouldn't treat them any differently than we treat anybody else. Everybody's concerned today about equality and treating everybody the same and sticking up for all sorts of people that have all sorts of different conditions or are born different ways. And but yet we have people with Down syndrome that are just treated without any respect and terminated before they're even brought into this world. So on behalf of many people in the building, a lot of folks behind me that work here and some that represent organizations that do a lot of fine work on a daily basis to preserve human dignity around this Commonwealth. I want to thank them for all they've done. But Scott Martin's doing a great job with this resolution, and I'm glad that we have the support today to get it done. So thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Senator. Up next will be Senator John DeSanto.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Kurt and Chloe. I appreciate it. I wasn't going to speak, but I felt I needed to because as God's parent, my wife Marie and I are godparents to a Downs baby, a son. And the family that adopted our godson has 4 natural children. They were so happy with our godson, and he brings so much joy into our life that they actually adopted a second Downs baby, a sister, because they wanted him to have a sister in his life that he could identify with. So I'm proud to be living testimony here in the Senate, supporting people that not only bless with the child, but actively seek out the joy that these children can bring. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kurt and Chloe, for all that you have done, and obviously thank you to my colleagues who are here tonight, and I think they all acknowledge that our work is not done yet. And I would just like to close with just saying a few things for you to chew on. What kind of society do we want to live in that upholds the joy like children Chloe bring? Do we want to live in a society that selectively chooses who gets to come into this world and who does not get to come into this world? I also wanted to think about it from the law perspective, and Kurt and I were actually talking about it. I want you to think about this amazing fact, and I'm going to close in this. In 1973, there were 2 things that occurred coming out of our federal government, or coming out of the courts. One was Roe v. Wade. The second, which obviously Roe v. Wade and what it meant to children in the womb, we all know. The second was the Endangered Species Act. And Kurt's actually written about this. You now can go to jail and pay massive fines for disturbing the eggs of an unborn turtle or mammals in the womb. That very same year, we created a culture that upheld animals over our own children. That's what we have been fighting for since. But when you hear stories like this, stories that were celebrated in other countries, what's going on, it shows you we still have a lot of work to do, and I know all these people standing behind me are committed to continuing to fight the battle alongside Kurt and Chloe. So God bless you all. Thank you for being here today. You want to hand them out? them out?
Hand them out. You can give them one. Thank you. Give them one.